My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
You know, the reality in examining actors versus the characters they're known for is that many of them fall very short, or short's not the right word. Many of them are very different than the characters they play. For instance, having spent a bit of time with William Shatner, I could tell you that he doesn't really believe that there are aliens. I'm willing to bet that Marlon Brando would be totally helpless when it came to ordering someone's bed to be filled with a horse's head. I'm guessing that even John Wayne could be just not counted on for a showdown at any corral, okay or otherwise. And that's one of the reasons it's so refreshing to be able to talk with Robert Wuhl. He's so well known for playing sports figures, both athletes themselves in films like Bull Durham and as a sports impresario and agent in a terrific television series like Arliss. Because when you talk to Robert Wuhl, you realize pretty quickly that he knows just as much, if not more, about the world of sports than the characters that he's played. Who better to turn to as we are still in the aftermath of analyzing the record viewership of the Super Bowl, which I have to be honest, I kind of don't understand why it was record viewership, but we'll get into that with Robert Wuhl, legendary comedian, actor, writer, etc. Robert, it's great to have you back on the program.
Frank, it's nice to hear from you. Although I have to question, were you saying that I'm the type of person you would have a blood-filled bed with a horse's head in it?
Well, certainly I would take you over Marlon Brando, right? Because I don't think Marlon Brando's bona fides as a mob boss were actually all that realistic in real life. So, but it is.
Thank you.
What did you think of the game, the Super Bowl? Obviously, it was not a lot of drama, but what was your take?
No, the game was like a fight. It was like from the beginning, the guy had been knocked down 3-4 times, and he wasn't going to win that fight. They were going to win that game. They were dominated. They were really. I was watching the game and I'm a big believer in. You got to put pressure on the quarterback. That's the name of the game. You got to put pressure on the quarterback. You give any NFL quarterback enough time, he's going to pick you apart. So you got to put pressure. And the fact that they put that much pressure on Mahomes, rushing only the front four, never blitzing once the entire game, I haven't seen that dominant a defense. Considering the opponent, I haven't seen this. That's 86 Bears stuff. But the 86 Bears were playing a totally outmanned New England Patriot team, I think. This is playing a 3-time world champion that won the last two and was going to break history. So there's a lot of pride there. Much better competition. And they dominated. A couple of thoughts I had was at the end of the game to Mahomes, I thought, he hit terrible, the first 2.5 quarters. But I said, somehow they wound up still putting 22 points on the board. I said, where did that come from? They were shut out for like 3/4 of the game. I said, so it's interesting that he actually, for me, as bad as he played, he still wound up putting up 22 points. That was something there. And also the other thing was, I would bet everybody, was talking about how the dominance was all in the AFC. It was all whoever won the Pittsburgh Buffalo game was going to be, was going to go to the Super Bowl,
sure.
Or whoever won the Buffalo Kansas City game was going to win the Super Bowl. Well, I got to tell you, when I saw the playoffs, you saw a dominant team here, and Detroit got got tripped up, but they got bit by a very unusual player, a very outstanding young. It was like a college quarterback going crazy, and they had their chance. But Philadelphia, remember, had been there the year before, so it's not like they hadn't been through this. They just dominated that game. There was just, that was domination. And I mean, from every part of it, those great, the field goals. He was dead on every field goal. They were, it's as impressive. I got to go back to when the 49ers were beating, San Diego, or when the Cowboys were beating the bad Buffalo, the lesser Buffalo teams. Shouldn't say bad. But this was a pretty much of my friends at the University of Houston would say, they opened up a can of whoop ass on them.
Yeah. I mean, I was, I have kind of odd hours. So at halftime, when it was 24-0, I took a nap and I stayed asleep for the second half of the game. It doesn't look like I missed all that much. I was a little surprised at seeing the news today that there were, on average, 126 million viewers, which is a new record. How could there be a new record in terms of viewership when the game was this much of a blowout?
Well, first of all, they're talking at the peak. I imagine it was because people did, they may not. It's the Super Bowl.
Sure,
it is. It's just at a time, it's a distraction that everybody runs to, and you can gamble on it, and now you can even gamble on it legally. People have parties. It's a social event. You'll see. They talk about it on The View. They don't talk about the Sunday Night Football. They talk about the Super Bowl and their experience. It's become a national holiday. In fact, the talk, of course, now is to add the 18th football NFL game, which is going to happen. There's not a doubt in my mind it's going to happen. Because that way the season like this one would go right up to President's Day next week, right? And which would mean that the Super Bowl would be the day before President's Day, which is already a national holiday, so that no one's going to work anyway. So it's like it makes perfect sense.
No, it would be a much better situation. I've said for years that they should have it be every Sunday. Every Super Bowl should be the Sunday before President's Day. You mentioned the gambling aspect and the legalized sports gambling aspect of this, which is such a good point. What role do you think legalized sports betting has played in football viewership over, say, the last 3 to 4 years as more and more states have gone in this direction? And is there anything we should be concerned about as a society now that it's so easy to gamble legally from your phone on all sorts of sports?
Well, as someone who's never placed a bet, but has stock in both Flutter, which is the parent company of FanDuel, and DraftKings. So I would. Has it made an effect in the sport? Absolutely, in all sports. Gambling, of course, it's going to have an effect. Has the lottery had an effect on the New York coffers? Yeah, I would say yes. Now, what questions? As one again who's never placed a bet, even though I'm fascinated by it. There is the thing to worry about, and there's no way you're going to, there's going to be people trying to fix game. I mean, there's point spreads, and you're going to see more. You're going to see more of that. You have to, especially on games. I once asked somebody, how many games are you tuned into a year? Somebody who was not on the right side of the law, and he said about 5 or 6. And I go. He goes, but it's the game it's the meaningless games. You don't want the attention of a big game. You want the meaningless games. You can get to a couple of people. However, now with NIL, maybe the price is going up a little bit higher. Yeah. On games.
You mentioned the aspect of games being fixed or tampered with. There's been quite a conspiracy theory over the last 2 years. I'm sure you're hip to it. Maybe this conspiracy is not quite as resonant today after the Chiefs lost, but a lot of folks believe the Chiefs get all the calls because there's a vested interest in seeing the Chiefs do well, make it to the Super Bowl, maybe win the Super Bowl. And there's a lot of aspects as to what the motivation might be. Usually they somehow involve Taylor Swift. Have you heard any of these Chiefs conspiracy theories, Robert?
I have heard these theories listen, the Dallas Cowboys used to get every call. I used to hear, the Dallas Cowboys get every call. The San Francisco 49ers, they get every call. Listen, nobody got more calls than the New England Patriots. It's like this always happens to the team that's winning. It always happens because they're usually the better team. They're usually the better team. By the way, this is not unusual in any sport. If Ted Williams' strike zone was not the same size as Oscar Gamble's. Greg Maddox's strike zone was Kenny Lofton used to tell me Greg Maddox's strike he had 2 more inches on either side of the plate. That happened. Tony Gwynn had 2 inches less. That happens. No, these guys aren't. Again, until these refs are called for, if you find something, like I said, some gambling or something, these guys are trying to do the best job they can. I'm sorry. These people are too vetted. They know the world. They make mistakes. Okay, so they make mistakes. I mean, nowadays with instant replay, they make a lot less of them. Think about 20 years ago when these people made a bunch of bad calls that did cost people games, and they couldn't be overturned. How many people's jobs got lost? Right. How many football coaches lost on a bad call and got fired? That doesn't happen as much anymore because of the instant replay. Yeah. Especially in baseball too. I see the baseball all the time. But in football, it's that's the thing when they say, well, this is evening it out. Not trying to even things out. People's jobs are at stake here. So you're going to try to get it right.
If people are just tuning in, we're talking with Robert Wuhl, actor, comedian, writer, and the star of the former HBO series Arliss, which you can still see on Max and a number of other places. Robert, just before we move on to one or two other issues, in terms of football in the New York area, a lot of people talking about the news that Aaron Rodgers is moving on. He's not going to be a Jet anymore. He's missed his opportunity now to be the vice president. Where do you see Aaron Rodgers going? Do you see him staying in football as an athlete or making a transition to some other aspect of the game?
I expect Aaron Rodgers to be playing quarterback for somebody next year. I don't think he's ready to give this up. It's a big payday. And that's number one. Number two, these guys generally, he's already come back from the injury he must feel because he looked better the last couple of games. But Aaron Rodgers is somebody who I won't miss. I'm sorry, I won't miss Aaron Rodgers.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
This episode is brought to you by GMC. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the GMC Certified Service Fresh Start Tire Event. Visit gmc.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
Yeah, I don't know that the Jet fans will at this point, this version of Aaron Rodgers either. But somebody that New York area sports fans are pretty excited is coming back, at least those of us that are Met fans are, is Pete Alonso, the polar bear. For a while, didn't look like we were going to get him, but now the Mets have a situation where we're going to have Soto and Pete Alonso in the same lineup, which is, as a Met fan, incredibly exciting. Where do you think the Mets end up this year? They did really well last year without Soto. Are you optimistic as somebody that, I don't know, knows a thing or two about baseball?
I think you have every reason to be optimistic as a Mets fan. Now, again, you're in a real tough division. I don't know. Is the starting pitching now what it was last year? You lost some big arms there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you just don't pick that up. The same thing with Atlanta. Atlanta lost Max Fried and they've lost Charlie Morton. Well, that's a bit of a hit there. So so I don't know if lineup-wise they should be pretty damn good. Also, I agree with Ron Darling. The great thing about this is you don't have to move Vientos. You don't have to move because he said Vientos, remember, it was basically a first full year. He was just getting his feet wet. He's trying to do better in the position. He's doing a little bit better. And now you're going to move him across the diamond to a position he's never played, and he's going to be Ron Darling thought it was a terrible move to move him. Let him develop there. Let him develop. So that's a positive. They've got and hopefully the catcher continues. But the polar bear belongs. It's great that they did it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
It doesn't. Besides the lineup, it's just. I'm glad the two sides, they worked it out. By the way, don't feel sorry for anybody on either side of the aisle here.
Yeah, no. Everybody's going to be just fine. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's funny. The last 3 of the last 4 teams in baseball last year were the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets. And those are the 3 teams with the highest payroll in all of baseball. A lot of we air in a bunch of mid-size and smaller markets that have baseball teams, cities like Minnesota and St. Louis. And there is some resentment from the part of the smaller markets that essentially there's this feeling that teams like the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets can just buy all the talent and make themselves contenders every year. And look, as a Met fan, I'm pretty happy that we're in a position to have those resources, but I totally understand where other fans are coming from. What can be done about that? I mean, the luxury tax was supposed to address it. There's always the talk of a broader salary cap. You see that changing anytime soon?
Terrific question. I do not. I do not, unless the owners want to hold out for a complete season. I do, because the union would never give in to a salary cap. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. So they would sit out. So what happened? Okay, now let me point out that this last year, yes, the big number teams were there. Remember, the Yankees weren't there the year before. And actually, baseball's had many, many, many more different winners than any other sport. Much more. You've had Kansas City won a world championship, not that long ago.
Right. 2015 against
San Francisco winning first. You had Texas winning. You've had Tampa Bay in the World Series. You had Arizona and Texas the year before last. Baseball has much more different champions. I mean, in the NFL, it was basically the Patriots and maybe Pittsburgh. That was about it. In the NBA, you had to play on 3 teams. So, but baseball's had many, many different winning teams, especially with the extra team in the playoffs. So that being said, does not answer the question, though, because this year we're seeing that, Dodgers spend a lot of money. Yankees spend a lot of money. These two teams. The Yankees always spend a lot of money. We're hearing it now that people hate the Dodgers. They say, what can be done about the Dodgers? It's like they're saying that in New York. It's like, wait a minute, pal, I lived in New York. I was with Steinbrenner all the time. It's like, what are you talking about? I don't think – the thing is you can win without the enormous payroll. No question about it. But you got to remember with those two markets, New York, L.A., you're talking about the two major markets, of the country. And L.A. now, because of the influx of Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto, they're an international team. So they are, and the Yankees are always an international team. You could go to I would guess you could go to, Zimbabwe, and there's going to be some kid with a Yankee hat on. So those are two brands that are trying to make this bigger and bigger and bigger as they're trying to expand the game, and they're willing to pay. Now, here's the thing. The Dodgers here's the gripes I hear. They're buying everybody. They bought their relief pitcher. They bought this guy. They bought T.K. Hernandez yesterday. I go, man, you're talking about role players here. We're not talking about Yamamoto, and we're not talking about Ohtani. But you're talking about every team could afford the relief pitchers that the Dodgers just picked up. Every team in baseball. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they're picking guys up for $3 million, $1.5 million, $4 or $5 million. Any team could pay for that. These guys all want to play for the L.A. Dodgers. That's why they're going there. Because there's going to be other offers going to be, I got to believe, just as good. They want to, or bigger. They want to play for the Dodgers. They've established what is known as the culture, as you say. But I could see the Mets and the Yankees, they have good cultures there right now. They could, the Padres are now in a money pinch because their owner died, and now the heirs are fighting for everything, so they may not spend like the owner spent. So they're having to cut the budget. We're fortunate that on East Coast we play in large market, areas. To your point.
I feel bad whenever a caller from Minnesota brings up something like this. They say that their teams are almost used as a glorified farm system for these major market teams. I understand where they're coming from, but to your point, I don't know that that's changing anytime soon. Robert,
keep this in mind.
Sure.
In everything you've said and everything we've just discussed, the Dodgers won their first World Series last year over a full season in over 30 years, and the Yankees haven't been to the World Series since 2009. So with everything we've just said about the small market teams, they've been winning.
That's a fair point. You can't argue with that. Robert, a lot of folks may know you from your on-screen work. A lot of folks even may remember you from that terrific Westwood One syndicated radio show that you did, which I really enjoyed listening to. By the way, do you miss radio, by the way?
I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. Yeah, it would be better now too.
I miss hearing it as a listener.
The difficulty I had was because, sadly, I was never in any markets live. Mm-hmm. So when you're not live, you can't take phone calls.
Right. No, I've been there.
It was totally about guests, and and it was hard on the producers. You had to get a lot of guests.
Yeah, no. I've been in that position, and you're basically doing a podcast that happens to air on the radio. It can be very challenging. Hey, what a lot of folks may not know about you is that you have a pretty accomplished and impressive record for writing the Academy Awards ceremony. Won a couple of Emmy Awards for your role co-writing the Academy Awards ceremony. The Oscars is less than a month away. A lot of people are starting to talk about the Oscars, what's nominated and what's going to happen at the show. How is producing and writing the telecast itself for the Oscars different today than it was back in 1990 or 1991?
I don't know. I haven't worked on it in many years, so I wouldn't know. I haven't worked on it in a lot of years, so I don't know exactly what it's like today. But the difference is, I would think it's no different. First of all, you have a much there was only 3 stations three networks, pretty much. Back in the day. Well, it was the early days in the '90s. There was other networks, but the competition is so spread out. Plus, the movie has changed. The movie business has changed. It's evolved. It's not unlike any other pop culture business. It's going to evolve, and people don't go to the movies like they used to go to the movies. That's another thing. You're dealing with films. A lot of people watch, and critics and everybody. People watch either streaming or in a screening. They really don't go to movie theaters that much. Except for the big tentpole, Marvel or blockbuster movies. It just doesn't happen that much. I just had a movie that was in the theaters for a month. Saturday night. It's about the first night of Saturday Night Live, and now it's streaming. And but the movies, it's hard to stay in a movie theater. So more personal movies are tending to do better because at the awards, because you're usually watching them in a more personal situation rather than being among a crowd. I used to do it. I was doing hosting an event, and I was talking about. Now I'm a member of the Academy.
Sure,
I am a member of the Academy, and again, I would say, spoiler alert: my Academy tends to lean somewhat to the left.
Right.
I said, to give you an idea how much in every goodie bag at the Oscars last year, there were 2 Syrian refugees. But it's you got to remember the Oscars are as Tommy Lee Jones, my dear friend, said to me on the eve of his winning an award. He goes, "It's the world's greatest trade show, but those things are worth money." And that's what it is. That's exactly what it is, and I support that. That's a good thing. That's good for the economy. But it is a great trade show, and I'm a member. I love it. But it's also those awards are worth something. They're worth something to the actors. They're worth something to the producers, to the distributors. It's good for the economy, basically. So I'm totally in favor of that, which is why I lean mostly towards voting. When I vote for, unless I've worked with an actor, I'll vote for the people around here. It's like, because I know they're worth money.
It's no different than when the All-Star Game balloting happens, right? You're voting for the Cincinnati Reds if you live in Cincinnati, right? I mean, you're voting for the hometown team, especially with the added economic advantage that you point out. There's always been, not always, I guess, but there's so often seems to be some sort of controversy surrounding the Academy Awards. One year it was the Oscars so white. Another year it was that Roman Polanski was nominated. There's always a little bit of a buzz. This year it has to do with one of the nominees for one of the big films having a history of controversial tweets a few years ago. Isn't that fun? I mean, a lot of people are clutching their pearls as if this is the biggest thing and the most significant thing ever, as if we're covering a big scandal at the United Nations Oil for Food program. I always really enjoy these controversies that are part of the run-up to the Oscars. As somebody that's kind of been on the inside looking out on this one, what's your take on all the Oscar controversies?
As someone who I didn't have any ones when I was writing it. There was none of them came up. What came up with us was Jack Palance doing one-arm push-ups, which was great.
Right.
So we took advantage of that. But as far as the controversies, I'm with you. I love them. I'm with you. But people say, "Oh, this the Academy Awards is not a place to make a political statement." It's like, it's the biggest audience this person's ever going to have. It's like, what are you, crazy? This is not. You don't enter the pearly gates because you win an Oscar. This is a trade show.
Right.
This is a business. This is a convention. Like, it's not the holy grail. It's not. It's great. This is like, So I don't mind. It's like you said. People are clutching their pearls, and And something, something original comes out of it, whether good, bad, whatever. Otherwise, it's people thanking their agents and their publicists, and it's
exactly.
Like,
it's boring.
Say something stupid. Go ahead, make a political statement and say something stupid.
Yeah, I'm rooting for the moments of Warren Beatty reading the wrong film, and as terrible as it was, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. I mean, that's what live television is all about. Is something unexpected, something going wrong. That's what's so great about it, as far as I'm concerned. You've done a lot of stuff, too much that we can list even in a 4-hour program. Obviously, a whole new generation discovers you every 10 years because of your role in the Batman film. I mentioned all the terrific sporting-related films that you've been in. Not all of them. I didn't mention Cobb. I didn't mention Blue Chips. But when I think of you, the first thing I think of is Arliss. And one of the things that we've seen with Max and a lot of the older HBO shows being available on Max on demand is that new generations of fans, younger fans that might not have had HBO at the time, might not have been alive at the time, are discovering shows that were a little before their time, shows like The Sopranos, shows like The Wire. Anecdotally, do you get the sense that that's happened with Arliss? Are new generations of fans discovering Arliss?
I would say yes. I'm not so sure if it's new generations, it's new fans. There's people who maybe didn't have HBO back then. But people are watching it. And to put us in the category of The Sopranos, I thank you, and The Wire, maybe my two favorite series.
Well, it's a different type of show, obviously.
The thing about what I hear all the time is that, wow, you were doing a lot of things about social issues before. It's like, and this is 25 years ago. And he goes, you were doing social issues? You were doing things about steroid abuse and domestic abuse and trans athletes and gay athletes and alcoholism and gambling and it's like, and unwanted abortions and everything. And at the same time, it's funny. I mean, we can have different storylines going. That's what I hear. That's what I hear a lot of now. Boy, at the show, I love Bob Costas calls me all the time. It's going, boy, I just watched the episode with blah blah blah. And we were very. And plus, with the athletes, when you see them and you watch the series, it's like a time capsule. Because you'll see Kobe, and you see Charles Barkley, and you see
Ken Griffey Jr.,
McEnroe, and you see Billie Jean King, and so it's a time capsule of the era.
Yeah. Lastly, Robert, one of the things that I get such a kick out of whenever I see the reruns is the episodes of American Dad that you did, where you play a version of yourself. And I just love that you're willing to kind of poke fun at yourself. And if people haven't seen American Dad, it's great, including where you're promoting an evening with Robert Wuhl. Here's a little bit of it.
Now let's head out and get us some potato salad.
Wait, I thought we were spending an evening at Carnegie Hall.
No, you're spending an evening with Robert Wuhl. It just started at Carnegie Hall. You're gonna love the potato salad at this place. Big chunks of potatoes. You see, I was the star of a show called Arliss.
I've never heard of that.
It was on HBO.
Really? Because I haven't seen it on HBO Go.
Guess it's HBO went.
More like HBO gone.
HBO left for a pack of cigarettes but never came back.
Nice.
Feed the chicken.
Enough! We were on for 7 seasons. Okay, if you want to get to know me, you'll love the next part of the evening with Robert Wuhl. My house.
You live in a deli?
No, I'm picking up some more potato salad. If you think I'm done eating potato salad for the day, then you don't know Robert Wuhl.
That's what we're trying to tell you.
We can't be any more clear about this.
Robert, 2-part question. 1, do you really have that kind of fondness for potato salad? 2, how come we don't have the option to do a real-life evening with Robert Wuhl in New York City?
Oh, that's kind of right now, it's tough for me to leave right now where I am in Los Angeles. But as far as potato salad, no, I am not a big potato salad, except at one place on the East Coast. What is the name of the big? What do they call the big Y's? I think it's called in the Berkshires. My wife's from the Berkshires. So we used to go up there, Great Barrington area, and I think it was called the Big Y. Those markets there, they have the absolute best potato salad in the world. There I am, that character.
Robert, it's always a treat talking with you. I hope we can do it again. We won't wait till next Super Bowl to do it.
Okay, my pleasure. Be well. Have a good time, everybody out there.
Thank you, Robert Wuhl. If you want to comment, you can certainly do so. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.